Good day and welcome to the news roundup for January 23. I am Abigail Smythe. Among the stories in this evening's newscast, the Chief Justice begins summation of evidence in long-running Klansman Wandon gang trial. Early childhood institution in St. James ordered closed amid a child abuse probe. St. James police probing the death of woman who fell from balcony of hotel in Montego Bay. Man who allegedly stabbed his uncle to death at his daughter's funeral turns himself in to the St. Mary police. In business, the Caribbean Development Bank forecasts 5.7% growth for Caribbean region this year. In the region, a number of deaths from cholera in Haiti rise to just under 500. Further overseas, United States launches new private sponsorship program to enable Americans to sponsor refugees. And in sports, Humble Lion continue their climb up the points tables in the Jamaica Premier League.
Teach them! Always make sure the message reach them!
Now for the news in detail. The St. James police are probing the death of a woman at a hotel in Montego Bay on Sunday. She has been identified as 25-year-old Sunny Hewitt. Hewitt reportedly fell from a balcony at the popular hotel. According to highly placed sources, there was no indication of anyone behind her when she went over the balcony. The source says, quote, "In other words, she was neither pushed and she didn't seem as if she jumped. It seems as if she fell owing to the state she was in," end quote. She was transferred from the hotel by ambulance to the Cornwall Regional Hospital where she succumbed to her injuries. It was reported that she was at the property celebrating her birthday. The St. James police have said that the fatality is a case of death by misadventure. Chief Justice Brian Sykes started his summation of the evidence in the long-running Klansman Wandon gang trial. The summation got underway in the Supreme Court in downtown Kingston. The trial, which got underway in September 2021, is the longest-running matter of its kind in Jamaica. The trial initially saw 33 alleged members of the St. Catherine-based gang being indicted on various charges, including murder, conspiracy to murder, arson, and illegal possession of firearm and ammunition. 5 of the accused were freed on the basis of insufficient evidence. There are 28 defendants remaining. The sole defendant in the matter, who was out on bail, Andre Smith, was shot and killed in August. And we will bring you developments from the summation as they arise. Kadeen Thomas, the wealth advisor of the National Commercial Bank, NCB, accused of a multi-million-dollar fraud at the institution, was remanded in custody Friday following her first appearance in the St. Anne Parish Court. Her attorney, Matthew Hyatt, says the bail application will continue at the next court date. The 35-year-old was charged on Monday with forgery, uttering forged documents, unauthorized access to computer data, access with intent to computer data, larceny as a servant, and engaging in a transaction involving criminal property. The allegations are that between 2020 and 2022, Thomas allegedly illegally withdrew funds amounting to more than $140,000 from a client's account. However, she continues to deny all allegations. Thomas is scheduled to make her second court appearance on February 2. In the meantime, former Chief Executive Officer of embattled investment firm Stocks and Securities Limited, SSL, Zachary Harding, says he had no knowledge of the level of impropriety recently discovered at the entity. The former CEO has distanced himself from the U.S. multi-million-dollar fraud. He notes that under his leadership, issues brought to his attention were proactively addressed, adding that during his tenure as CEO, between September 2019 and June 2022, it was never revealed nor brought to his attention that clients' investment funds were being misappropriated. Harding says he worked closely with the Financial Services Commission, FSC, to fix what he calls legacy issues the company had. A 2017 report from the commission labeled SSL as a problem entity. However, the company continued its operations. Mr. Harding says a committee was established to address those irregularities. Mr. Harding says while procedures are in place to safeguard investors, there's not much regulators can do to stop an individual with criminal intent. The new Discoverers Daycare and Preschool in St. James has been ordered closed by Minister of Education Faithful Williams amid a child abuse probe. A former caregiver who recorded the beating of a 3-year-old baby says she witnessed the beating and abuse of at least 7 other children while employed at the institution. The institution is owned and operated by retired teacher Marcia White and her daughter in Catherine Mount, Montego Bay, and has been operating at the location since 2021. Latoya Gray Allen, who worked at the educational institution for a year, released a series of voice notes Saturday afternoon stating that children who could not speak well were often beaten and were beaten on the soles of their feet so the abuse could not be detected. Gray Allen was fired in December 2022 but says she started recording the acts of abuse on the babies because what she witnessed could not continue. One of those videos went viral last Thursday after it was released on social media, showing the beating of the 3-year-old with a ruler in a bathroom while another child was seen lying on the bare tiles. Chairman of the Early Childhood Commission, Tricia Williams-Singh, says the preschool and daycare, which has 63 children enrolled, will not be reopening anytime soon. She adds that personnel from the commission did their due diligence and uncovered some startling information. She notes that the commission was able to confirm the things seen in the video while pointing to the Early Childhood Act of 2005, which speaks to corporal punishment. It states that it shall not be inflicted on a child in an early childhood institution. When the former caregiver was asked why she did not alert the authorities sooner, she said she was scared but gave hints to some parents. She says she released the video after hearing that another child was beaten recently. She also recalls children having their ears, hair, or hand pulled. She says another child was punished by being locked in the bathroom. A man who allegedly shot and injured a policeman is dead and an illegal firearm and ammunition seized following an incident at a bar in Farm Pen, Westmoreland Saturday night. The deceased has been identified as 33-year-old Michael Davis from the community. Reports from the police are that an off-duty police officer was a patron at a bar when he observed Davis dressed in a gray hooded jacket with an object shaped like a firearm in the front pocket of the jacket. Davis then walked from the bar and returned shortly after, looked in the direction of the constable and again walked out of the bar. According to the report, the constable went in pursuit of Davis, who is alleged to have run upon seeing the officer. The constable reportedly identified himself as a police officer and instructed Davis to stop. However, the suspect continued running and subsequently fell to the ground. It is alleged that Davis immediately pulled a firearm and fired, hitting the off-duty cop on his upper left arm. The cop then pulled his Glock service pistol and returned fire, hitting Davis in his chest, arms, abdomen, and left foot. The officer then retrieved the firearm, a black Glock 19 9mm pistol with 4 rounds of ammunition. The off-duty officer is said to have called for police assistance and later drove himself to the hospital for treatment, while Davis was transported shortly after to the hospital by the police, where he was pronounced dead. This is the second police fatal shooting in Westmoreland since the start of the year. As police processed one murder scene in Rules Pen, Maypen Saturday night, gunshots from the adjoining community of Palmer's Cross alerted them to a second fatal shooting. In the Rules Pen incident, 31-year-old farmer Joel Bartley was killed as he cooked soup at the side of a shop. According to the police report, a man armed with a long gun entered the shop and asked to be served. He exited the shop after not getting assistance. He later returned, this time with a man armed with a shorter gun who kicked open a zinc gate to the right side of the building and shouted that he was police. Bartley attempted to step back into the shop and the man armed with the short gun reportedly shot him in the head and he fell. The man armed with the long gun then shot him while he was on the ground. The shooters left on foot. When the police were summoned, they arrived to find Bartley's body on its side. As for the second shooting, which took place about 11 p.m., the police say Fitzroy Blair, also known as 2 Pound, was on his way to his house after leaving a community bar when several loud explosions were heard. Residents later found him on Church Lane and alerted the police. Blair, a 35-year-old mason from Ramsey Drive, Palmer's Cross, was seen lying face down in a pool of blood. Investigations continue into both killings. The 37-year-old man who allegedly stabbed his uncle to death at his daughter's funeral last week has turned himself in to the Port Maria police in St. Mary. The resident of Huddersfield in St. Mary is accused of fatally stabbing 67-year-old Marvin McLean at the Whitehall Cemetery. They were among those gathered to mourn the death of the younger man's 5-year-old daughter. Some residents have indicated that there has long been tension in the family. However, relatives have refused to speak about the cause of the issue. The man accused of stabbing his uncle to death turned himself into the police on January 19, 4 days after the incident occurred. The Road Safety Unit in the Ministry of Transport is calling for increased caution when traversing the island's roadways. The call comes after a total of 11 people died from 9 fatal crashes since the start of this year. According to the latest traffic crash update, 5 of the victims were pedestrians, 4 were passengers, and 2 were motorcyclists. So far, St. Elizabeth has recorded the highest fatalities with 3 deaths, while Manchester and St. Catherine each recorded 2. Fatalities for 2023 are projected to increase by 0.4% when compared with 2022, which recorded a total of 488 road fatalities. And in business news, the Caribbean Development Bank, CDB, reported on Wednesday that Caribbean countries averaged growth of 10.3% last year compared to 4.5% in 2021. Its forecast for this year is growth of 5.7%. CDB Vice President of Operations, Isaac Solomon, says regional growth was largely underpinned by increased energy production in Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago and higher international oil prices, fueling much of the 20.6% economic growth in commodity exporting member countries of the CDB. In the tourism-dependent countries, increases in extra-regional airlift also resulted in a strong recovery amid rising inflation. The 5.7% regional growth forecast by the CDB for this year is anchored on the continued resuscitation of the tourism sector and energy investments. The CDB official also notes that access to food remains a major concern and that food security threatens the region, especially the poor, for whom food and fuel represent a large share of their consumption basket. As such, Solomon says the bank welcomes and supports an initiative of CARICOM heads of government to reduce the estimated $5 billion regional food import bill by 25% by 2025. And in the region, nearly 4 months after its reappearance in Haiti, the number of deaths from cholera has risen to 496. In a statement on Saturday, the Ministry of Public Health and Population said the country has already registered 25,182 suspected cases and 21,407 hospitalizations, while 312 of the 496 deaths occurred in health institutions and 184 in the communities. The health authorities state that the average age of those infected is 19 years and the positivity rate is 37.25%. Most of the suspected cases are males. The most affected age group is 1 to 4 years old, with 374 confirmed cases out of more than 3,000 suspected cases. The most affected department is the West, where Port-au-Prince is located and where more than 1/3 of the population lives, with 1,155 confirmed cases for 16,408 suspected cases. Last week, the World Health Organization warned that the world is suffering unprecedented cholera outbreaks in countries affected by climate disasters and other crises. As a result, vaccines to prevent this disease have become extremely scarce. And on the international scene, the United States has launched a new private sponsorship program that will enable Americans to sponsor refugees arriving through the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program amid heightened concern over plans by the Joe Biden administration to limit migrants from the Caribbean and other countries. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony J. Blinken says the Department of State, in collaboration with the Department of Health and Human Services, has launched the Welcome Course that would directly support refugees' resettlement and make a difference by welcoming these new neighbors into their communities. In the program's first year, the Biden administration's goal is to mobilize at least 10,000 Americans to step forward as private sponsors and offer a welcoming hand to at least 5,000 refugees from around the world. The U.S. Secretary of State says the Welcome Course will build on, quote, the extraordinary response of the American people over the past year in welcoming our Afghan allies, Ukrainians displaced by war, Venezuelans, and others fleeing violence and oppression, end quote. And finally, in sports, Humble Lion continued their climb up the points table in the Jamaica Premier League on Sunday, edging Portmore United 1-0. They now move into third place in the competition. The first game of the doubleheader was not played as Chapelton Maroons were unable to field a team to face Mount Pleasant a week after firing coach Lenworth Hyde. The Chapelton team, who were promoted to the JPL this season, have struggled to keep pace and are in 12th place, 1 point from the relegation zone. In other games, Waterhouse FC beat Cavalier FC 1-0. Defending champions Harbourview snapped a 5-game winless run after edging Montego Bay United 1-0, and Tivoli Gardens scored back-to-back wins for the first time as they beat Malines United 2-1 despite playing with 10 men from the 37th minute. And in the International Premier League, Manchester City defeated Wolves 3-0. Arsenal edged Manchester City 3-2, while Leeds and Brentford ended their match 0-0. And that's it for your news roundup for today. I am Abigail Smythe. See you next time.
Teach them! Hey, yo, hello! Send the message and make it reach them. It's teach them. Right here, Warlord representing.
Thank you for watching. Like the video before you go. Please subscribe if you haven't done so. And remember to share the video with your friends and family. And browse the channel for more quality content. Until next time, walk good, my friends.
Teach them!